setting up tonight with a video camera, whether we can videotape Bible study and upload it to like YouTube or something like that so people can watch it later for a number of different reasons. So we're going to try to make it available in any case. It's already available via the podcast. But we're going to try to make it available a couple of different ways so that you can always link into it. But if any of these nights you can give us, I would appreciate it. If not, no big deal. We'll just put it back on the table and get it around. Can you start that around for me?
Yes, sir.
I have a pen. All right. There you go. All right, good. Okay. What's that? Okay. So we're going to get into, I asked you to do some homework this week. You didn't know you were getting into school. We're doing homework every week. What is this all about? We looked at Matthew chapter 6 over the course of this week. So if you have your Bible and you have some journal notes or whatever from last week, what did you, as you read through Matthew 6 is the words of Jesus, powerful passage, freedom for those of us, but it really addresses, if I struggle with worry, with anxiety, with projecting into the future and feeling like I don't know what it's going to be like or feel like, I don't know if I'll be able to handle it, Jesus really addresses that Jesus really addresses that pretty heartily in Matthew chapter 6. And so I had you read from 19 down to the end of the chapter and just grab some of those truths from there. Also gave you a CD. I made you a playlist for the week. Did anybody get to listen to the CD this week? A couple of you. What did you notice about listening to songs like that, and or if you made your own playlist? Anything?
It just, all those songs just reaffirm like how much God loves us and how we need to fix our eyes on Him when we're having trouble and things like that. So just like very uplifting, especially if you're in one of those moments of
It's very true. Good Christian truth in songs that will speak to you for sure. Any other reactions from listening to the playlist for the week?
I loved it. I try to listen to only Christian, mostly Christian.
Right.
The songs that were taken just amazing.
They hit the spot, right? So what I'm hoping is if you do that, what you recognize is there's a choice you can make, like we talked about the first week. There are choices you can make on a daily basis, on a good day or a bad day, that will help strengthen your traction on solid ground. One of those choices is, what am I listening to musically on good days and bad days in a pattern? And I think what you'll find is, over time, if you have a steady diet and you're deliberate about the kind of stuff you listen to, when bad moments come, for me, this happens all the time. There's a little playlist going in the back of my head of stuff that I listen to, and I don't even recognize why that song is kind of in my head right now until I think about it for a second. That is exactly answering what's going on in front of me, and it's God using music to remind me of truth that I already know. Has that ever happened to you? Isn't that amazing?
It's funny because like I was listening to the music, right? And like kind of it keeps on playing, or whatever, but I'll go to sleep and like it's like in the middle of the night, like this like one song out of all of them is playing in my head, and I'm like, goodness, can you stop playing in my head? I'm like, this is crazy, but it's true because it is. It's like whatever song it is, it's like reminding me of something that I need to like.
There's some kind of an imprint of music into me that a different zone than if you listen all day to messages from great preachers or you read books all day, it doesn't have the same recording inside of you that music does. So, prayer, being intentional about Thanksgiving, being intentional about putting my requests before the Lord, letting Him have them, reading the Word of God, journaling from the Word of God, study, being intentional about what passages that I'm going to read and what I'm going to put into my mind. Very, very important. Music, another really important thing. So there are choices you can make that equip you for the battle, that will dramatically enhance your readiness to fight, to stand in toe-to-toe with the things that are challenging you. So again, like I said, we looked at Matthew 6 this week, and I was hoping that you would have some things that stood out to you, maybe something you learned, or even better, something maybe you used this week from Matthew chapter 6. Anything like that for anybody as you went through store up for yourselves treasures on earth. The eye is the lamp of the body. No one can serve two masters. Don't worry about what you eat or drink. Why don't you worry about your clothes? Your Father knows you have need of these things. Seek first the kingdom of God. Only worry about today, because tomorrow has enough trouble for itself. So that's kind of like, that's the flow of what Jesus says there. What did you grab? Anybody have anything that they'd like to share? Yeah.
So I jotted down as a journal entry, but at that,
Go ahead.
I said, Jesus wants me to know that his Father, God will supply all my needs, according to Philippians 4:19.
Yes.
Also that he will never leave me nor forsake me, according to Deuteronomy 31:6. When I come to him in prayer and surrender all to him, I know that he will make everything new and restore anything that the enemy has stolen. God is a shield when I need to be protected, a comforter when I'm lonely, and a great friend and a listener when I need someone to talk to. Matthew 6:33-34 clearly says, if we seek him, his kingdom, then whatever we are seeking for him, it shall be given to us. Therefore, I do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will take care of itself.
Yeah.
Once we go to God in prayer about a situation that may worry us, that is our time to once again surrender all burdens to him and leaving it with him, trusting that he will take care of it.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. And what I love is the therefore. Because that's the biblical pattern. You just like mimicked it perfectly. Biblical pattern is, this is true, this is true, this is true, therefore, this is what I will do. And not just in my actions or my words, this is what I will do in my mind. This is what I will do in my soul. This is how I will respond to what I know is true. So, wonderful, very good.
I had a study Bible, so one of the things that it said in the bottom, when we were talking about the verses and stuff like that, it just said, what we treasure the most controls us. And like that kind of stuck out for me because I'm a control freak. And so like I want to control everything. So if I'm letting all that stuff control me, then really, then I'm not letting God under control.
Yeah.
So that kind of stuck out.
That's perfect. And that's exactly what I wanted you to get. You may have been like, why is Mark asking us to read about don't store up money for yourself on our treasure? That doesn't make any sense. And because we think about it as money, But there's a lot of earthly things that we want to pile up. We want to store up, right? We put our hope in having enough of it, control being one, but other things that fall into that category. Enough information, enough influence, enough reputation, enough of people's opinion about whatever. I want to pile up treasure on earth. But what does Jesus say about everything that is part of this earth? What's going to happen to it? It's gone. So he says to them, what's the point of trying to pile up something that's going to go away when you can pile up stuff eternally that you know will never go away? It puts things in perspective and it causes us in a very healthy spiritual way to lose hope in some of the things that we've been deceived into thinking are hope. Follow me? I've lived like my hope is if someone will listen to me, or if I can get that job, or if this person will change their mind, or whatever. I've lived like that's hope, but it's not. It's a deception. It's a trap. And how do I know when I've put my hope in a trap? When it never pays off. When it's always the carrot on the stick out there, and I'm always running after it and I never get it. Because God doesn't say, keep chasing after peace. Nowhere in the Bible does God say, chase after peace. What does he say? Let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. The picture's verbally, it's chasing after you. Let it get you. Let it get you. How do I do that? Because I give up on things that I've decided or thought or acted like, this will bring me peace if I chase after this. When I give up on that by the grace of God, then what happens is peace comes and gets me. We use the word surrender to talk about that. Let go, give up, right? Yeah, I don't have any more chairs, so you might have to.
Oh,
it's okay. I don't. You can wherever.
we're trying to be not distracted.
You can grab one of the best if you want. It's just us here. Nobody cares.
I'm not excited about coming out like
It's just our little class. It's having fun. So that hopefully, as we went through Matthew 6, hopefully that insight wasn't missed on you. And I think that what you treasure, if you want to know what you treasure, if you want to self-evaluate, look at what you spend your time contemplating, what you spend your hope on, your effort on, your energy on, your tomorrows, your imagination on, your attention, your focus. Where do I spend that? Not where do I have to spend that. I gotta go to work and spend my attention on it. Yeah. Where do you choose to spend it? And the choice is up to you. And that has a big, big window into your soul about what you treasure. And Jesus then says, don't lay up treasure for yourself on earth, because it's all going away. Lay up for yourself treasure in heaven. Live for eternity. Live in view of eternity. Live with values of eternity instead of value of the here and now. And that's huge. And if you let that plant into your soul and grow up into a tree, I mean, that's a huge, huge freedom piece right there. And treasure.
There's one other thing that kind of stuck out in my Bible, study Bible, but it said, worry immobilizes what concern moves you to action.
Okay?
And like, that kind of stuck out because I do feel like when I am in that worry mode, that's all I do is worry.
Yeah.
But if I'm just like concerned about something, like I feel like I can get through it better than if I'm just.
Yeah. It's a good distinction, and what I'll say is this. What worry likes to deceive you into thinking is that you are in action. Worry likes to make you feel like you're doing something about the thing. When you're not doing anything about the thing, you're just stuck. Worry's like, well, what am I going to do? I can't just be at peace. I can't just put it out of my mind. I have to think about it. Oh, okay. Now ask yourself, what does that grow? What fruit does that produce? Is that what God's asking me to do? Is that why God brought it to mind? So I would sit here and concern gives me the opportunity to act on something in some productive way. And if I can't do that, it's probably God's call for me to let God have it and trust that He's good enough for me. Good.
The treasures in heaven part, I took as a reminder that this earth wasn't my final destination. And the more I think of Jesus preparing the place for me, as John 14, that where He is, I would also the less I worry.
Yes.
And the promise of eternity with Jesus is a huge deterrent to worrying about things that won't matter in a few years.
Yeah.
When I'm home with Him.
Yeah.
Because I'm not young anymore, so for me, I consider it a few years. And that's my destination. And then I got to thinking, well, what's the treasure in heaven? And I thought, Jesus.
Yeah.
So if that's my final destination, it's always really, you mentioned that, like keeping heaven
Yes.
in your mind to remind you that Earth's going to go away.
And as we go through life, what's the precious thing about this life? Real precious thing to us. Right? People. So don't you get that that's a taste of what you just said? What's the precious thing about heaven? It's not that there's no sickness or crying, there's not that there's streets of gold in a mansion. It's Jesus. It's like if you can imagine being away from your loved ones for a year, the person that's the dearest in life, and you were away from them, you couldn't see them, you couldn't touch them and then you finally got to come home. Do you care about what the house looks like and what car they pick you up in? And you just want to be with them, right? It's the person. And there's a taste of eternity. It's like, I don't know what eternity is like, but you kind of have a taste in it. So you can kind of use that to remember, what is it where my hope is? My hope is in eternity. My hope is in heaven. My hope is Jesus. Right? Good. That's awesome. Good. Any other thoughts? You guys obviously spent some time this week digging into that. I want to make that available to every single one who is here tonight before we jump into the stuff we're going to talk about. Why do I keep doing this?
One of the things I got to get Brad me was not only you're not supposed to build, you're supposed to give.
Yeah.
So instead of building all your money up and making sure you're able to help somebody out that's less needy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I took that out of it too.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think there's, for worry always wants to gather, faith is ready to give. Right? So even my worry that's, kind of for someone else is really for me. I've had people say a lot of times to me, and moms especially struggle with this. I just can't stand it when my child, blah, blah, blah. Right? And that masquerades as love and concern for my child. But did you hear what you just said? And I try not to be too sharp about this because it's a hard thing. I just can't stand it. Who can't stand it?
You don't like how it feels.
I. Who's that about? Oh, it's about my kid. No, it's not. A lot of times, I know their kid's situation, and I know their kid's not that upset about it. Their kid's as blind as can be, or whatever. They're just fine with it. It's me. I'm the one who's suffering because I won't let go of that thing. I won't allow God to have that thing. I won't trust that God is big enough for it. And so I feel like I'm caring about somebody, but I'm not. I'm worried about me, and I can't stand it. So to me, as you read through this, the two things that I take out of this that I think are really huge nuggets. Number one, Jesus ends it by saying, so don't worry. He starts it by saying, so don't worry. In the middle of it, he says, so why do you worry? So the whole theme of this is, you shouldn't be worried. But what's the foundation of his argument? Why shouldn't we be worried? Kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier. There's a truth thing here. Therefore, don't worry. Why? What does Jesus say?
Trust that God's in control and
Okay.
He has our interests taken care of.
Did you pick that up as we go through it? God's in control, and God cares about us. Like, in other words, as you read through this, look at the birds of the air. They don't sow or reap or store away, and yet your heavenly Father feeds them. Are you not much more valuable than them? What does he say there? If God cares about the birds, is it hard for you to imagine that he cares about you? If God takes care of their needs, is it hard for you to imagine that God will take care of yours? He's asking us to believe that God sees and God cares. And goes on. Why do you worry about clothes? See how the flowers of the field grow. They don't labor or spin. Yet even Solomon in all his splendor was not dressed like one of these. If that is how God clothes the grass of the field, which is here today and gone tomorrow, will he not much more clothe you? So, do not worry. He's building it on the truth of, if you could look around and see how God cares about these things that are so temporal and so small in comparison to the creation of you, can you not grab hold of that God sees and God cares? Because he says, pagans run after all these things. Your heavenly Father knows that you need him. So, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, all these things will be given to you. The foundation of Jesus' command or instruction, do not worry about tomorrow, the big point is that God cares. God sees. God provides. So he is trustworthy. That when Jesus says, don't worry, he says to you, can you believe that God is trustworthy? And that's the question in front of us every single day. One big nugget. The other one, and this to me is astounding, how Jesus says this. It's just the simple verse 34. Don't worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. And then he closes it by saying, each day has enough trouble of its own. And I could probably talk for the next 2 hours about that last phrase. Each day has enough trouble for itself, on its own. And what Jesus is referring to there is simply, you do not relieve tomorrow's burden by trying to carry it today. What you actually do is extend tomorrow's burden by trying to carry it today. You weren't called to carry it till tomorrow, but I'll just put it up on my shoulder and carry it another extra day or 2 or a week or a month or a year. I'm not there yet, but I'm going to carry it now. Have you ever carried one of those burdens when you got to the moment you found out it was either completely invalid or God changed the course altogether? So basically, I hope that we can learn this. We've elected to live in something we feared enough to worry about it and carry it. We chose voluntarily, we volunteered for this. I will carry that burden, even though it's not mine yet, even though I don't have to go through it yet. I'm going to carry it for a while. And when I get there, it wasn't even mine to carry. So I've chosen a weight God never asked me to call. That was tomorrow's burden, if it was any burden at all. But I chose to carry it today. So what I recognize about it is this. Number one, it doesn't relieve tomorrow's burden, it extends it. But number two, it doesn't remove tomorrow's burden, it guarantees it. In other words, whether it comes or not, I've already lived in it. Right? So the point there is, on the other side, what I know about God and his goodness and his faithfulness is, when I get to that burden, what's God going to do in that moment for me? When I show up with something maybe I feel is overwhelming, or hurtful, or what's God going to do in that moment for me?
Yeah, it broke.
He's going to be there. He's going to give me strength. He's going to be present. He's going to show. Have you ever been in a dark, dark moment and you just knew God's presence was there and you could feel Him lifting you up and moving you through? You know that? You just know it in your soul? God isn't there 3 weeks earlier while you're thinking about that moment. He's there when the moment's there. So we choose to live without His strength, and it feels like this awful, awful thing because we're living without His strength because He hasn't given us the grace for it yet. The grace is up there. He's given us the invitation, according to verse 34, to not worry about that yet because tomorrow has enough trouble for itself. I'll give you the strength for that when we get to that. So my hope is not in seeing it coming, preparing my soul for how it will feel, thinking through all of the angles of it. My hope is in, when I get there, God will be there. And don't you know that your Heavenly Father knows you have need of these things? And don't you know that He will take care of you? So the answer in my head is, yes, that could be awful, that could be horrible. But you know what? God knows, and God provides, and I don't have to know how it will feel, and I don't have to work it all out. I can work this out. My faith will be in God then, and by how? Preparing, by my faith being in God today. That when I get there, He'll lead me, He'll show me, He'll provide for me, He'll strengthen me, He'll rescue me, He'll whatever it needs to be, because He's God and He's good and He cares about me and He sees me. Isn't that a fantastic promise? And this is not something we're just reading from some book somewhere. These are the words of Jesus in one of the most powerful discourses of all time, the Sermon on the Mount. Words from Him to you, His children. Questions that I will. All right. So, to me, that's a fantastic passage, and we could go on and on about that. But I want to get to this. Tonight, what I want to talk about, and this is something that's been on my... When I first sat down and said, we're going to talk about anxiety, this is one of the things that came to my head right away. And I sent it to people who were here on time. Those of you who weren't, I didn't say this. This is one of the truths that probably did more to transform my understanding of what Christianity is and isn't than any other truth that I've ever heard in my life. About 20 years ago, we went through this, and I've shared it a number of times, so if you already heard this, I apologize, but it's good for a refresher, it's good for me for a refresher. When the Bible talks about a Christian, it talks about two things. We need to get familiar with a couple of things, because sometimes when you live the experience of being a Christian, you wonder, you get mad at yourself, you get frustrated at yourself because I should know better than this. I've already learned this. I already dealt with this. I already moved past this. Why am I back at... Has anybody else ever done this? You know, God, supposedly I'm free from this, but I keep falling into it. Why is that? Why don't I ever move on from it? Why don't other people seem to struggle with the same things I struggle with? And if I'm a Christian and I'm growing, what's that all about? Why do I seem susceptible to getting tripped up all the time? So the Bible talks over and over again, and Paul talks all the time about these two words. We've got to get familiar with these two words. And they are flesh and spirit. All right? So we've got these two ideas here. Flesh. The Greek word is sarx, which is the word for the meat on your bones, the skin on your body, the literal flesh of you. But it's not used only in the terms of your body, it's used in terms of your humanity. Okay? When you are born as a physical human being, you are born into flesh. Jesus talks about in John 3, that which is born of flesh is flesh. Right? When he's talking to Nicodemus. So there's this idea of flesh. This is your humanity. This is the part of you that someday for all of us is going to die and be buried and put in the ground. It is your flesh. It is your humanity. There's another part that the Bible talks about all the time, and that is spirit. And if you get into books like Ephesians and Romans and Colossians and a lot of Paul's writings, you start to find these two words, flesh and spirit. I want to look at what they mean, and I want to show you kind of why some of our efforts to do better, to try harder, to stop doing that, fail, or succeed temporarily and then come back. Okay, so we're going to kind of dig into this. Hopefully it makes sense, because Again, this is something that could probably be a day-long thing, but I'm hoping that we can get through it in just a night. All right, so the spirit, this flesh is my humanity. I use that term a lot as I speak on Sunday morning. This is my humanity, it's my flesh, okay? It's the part of me that's temporal, it's the part of me that's earthly. It's not literally just my physical body, it's the part of my humanity that exists before Jesus. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's fleshly emotions, there's fleshly psychology, and in reality, if you get deeper into it, my soul, mind, will, and emotions responds to my flesh, and my flesh dominates them, so it dominates my thinking, it dominates my feeling, it dominates my decisions. All right? Before I'm saved, that's all I have, my flesh. What do we know about my humanity? What do we know about my flesh? When I'm born, it has a problem. What's the problem? Sin. I have a problem in my flesh called sin, a sin nature, if you will. Okay? What does that do for me in my life? What happens because I have a sin nature in my flesh?
Guides me in the wrong direction.
Right.
Yeah. My flesh guides me in the wrong direction how many times out of how many?
100%.
All the time. Even when it's proposing that I do something that looks good or feels good or other people would say is good, my flesh drives me in the wrong direction every single time. In Matthew 7, Jesus talks about two trees. He talks about good trees and bad trees. And he's demonstrating the false prophets. By their fruits you will know them. Right? And then he says this. A good tree always brings forth good fruit. And a bad tree always brings forth bad fruit. So, what does that mean? The false prophet, if he's actually a bad tree, he's always going to say evil, wicked things. What he's talking about is their teaching. He's saying that every time something grows out of flesh, humanity, human understanding, human desires, it always produces death. And Galatians says the same thing. Galatians 6, don't be deceived, God doesn't mock, what you sow you will reap. And then the next thing it says this, if you sow to the flesh, you reap destruction. If you sow to the Spirit, you reap life. Over and over again, we find there is this guarantee. When I live out of my flesh, it destroys. It's sinful. It always is twisted and warped. Sometimes it dresses up really nice, but it's always sinful. When I live in the Spirit, that's the part of me that is made new in Jesus Christ. That's the part of me that's born again. It's born again into a new identity. What's my identity in my spirit? I am a child of God. I am washed, I am forgiven, I am made new, I am alive in Jesus Christ. Not because I was good enough, but just like a baby. That's why the birth analogy is so good. There was nothing meritorious about that baby. It was born as a gift. And you were born again as a gift. And when you were born, you got a different identity. And by the way, the big difference between this and this, aside from this being always sinful, is that this is temporary and this is forever. So, if I said to you that I was going to go away this week and I was going to stay in a hotel, in Pittsburgh or something, would I say, please forward all my mail there, and that's my new home? Or is it just, I'm there for a week? Right? Okay, if this is temporary, and this is forever, who am I really? This is who I am. And what you'll find again and again in the Bible is that the Bible argues from identity. And your identity is who you have been born to be eternally. The condition of your eternal soul. That's who you are. According to Paul, again and again, that's who you are. So you have inside of you, if you are a child of God, you have these two things going on. You've got a flesh, and you've got a spirit. And your flesh remains your humanity, and your spirit has been quickened, has been made alive, it is everlasting, it is brand new, it is given to you by God. Your flesh, in the uniqueness of who you were born to be, has certain ways of dealing with life. Natural tendencies of coping. Personality things, sensitivities, soft spots, ways of looking at people, ways of looking at life, introvert, extrovert, Maybe you're somebody who has a lot of confidence, maybe you're somebody who has no confidence. Like, there's ways of your flesh, through sin, has ways of coping with life. Now, why would you need a way of coping with life? Because life stinks. Life is hard. People are jerks. They do bad things to you, right? And since life hurts, I've got to cope with it. What will my flesh never do to deal with life? It will never live by faith, trusting someone else. Flesh will cope with, flesh will look around and say, what can I do about this? How can I deal with this? And man, aren't there all kinds of different ways of dealing with it? I got a list in a book, like 3 pages of little print stuff. These are the ways your flesh shows itself. It can be, some people, in order to gain control, they'll use silent treatment. Other people will use outbursts of anger. But they're both flesh, even though they're dramatically different. Some people will please other people, while other people will, go against the flow all the time. But they're both flesh, trying to find identity without faith. They're flesh, and your flesh remains sinful. So you have your own uniquenesses. One of the reasons that you maybe struggle with anxiety is because your flesh uniquely was created and twisted. Like I said at the beginning, smart people, sensitive people generally struggle with anxiety because your brain is active and your heart is tender, so you wind up struggling with anxiety. So the strengths God gave you get twisted into a vulnerability. Make sense? So since you feel the pain and since you think about the pain, you've got to find a way of dealing with it. And one of flesh's methodologies is to let it build up in you, to worry it out, to talk about it with everybody, and to kind of find some way where I can get my hands around this thing. Okay? What did we just see in Matthew 6? Trust. God is trustworthy. What do we want to do? I want to trust and. What did Jesus say in Matthew 6? No one can serve 2 masters. It's a choice, not a both and. Okay? So, my flesh can look good or bad. But the key truth about my flesh is that when I live by my flesh, I live out of what I have. My strength, my thoughts, my desires, my resources. I live out of me. What can I do about this? I don't need to depend on anyone else. I'm going to handle it in me. Does that make sense? Anybody ever experienced that? Like, can you identify that in you? Okay. So, flesh. Right? My ideas are in charge, my abilities are the way that I'll handle life. The Spirit, the everlasting part of me, was made alive in Jesus, and now that's the part that by faith depends on my inability. I've given up on my human ability to manage life. So who am I trusting for strength, for direction, for peace, for hope, for deliverance, for salvation, for protection? Who am I trusting for that? My spirit walks by faith. Because I was born as a child of God, just like my flesh has natural tendencies, my spirit has natural tendencies. And my spiritual natural tendency is, God, here I am. I want you to use me, fill me, show me, lead me. I trust in you. I walk by faith. It's what allows 3 men to get thrown into a fire. Right? Or a man to get thrown into a lion's den. It's what allows a guy named Abraham to pick up and go from the land that he knew just because God said go. Because why? Where am I going, God? God says, I'll show you. It's what allows Abraham to walk up a mountain with his son and put him down on an altar and lift up a knife because I trust you. You can't cope with that. You can't work that out in your head. And God will over and over again put you in overwhelming circumstances to bring us to the end of the hope we have in cope. Right? Have you been there? I don't know how much more I can take. Exactly. You're starting to get it. Why would God do that? Because He hates me. Because I'm so bad. Because I failed. Because I live by my flesh. No, because He knows how hard it is to not live in your flesh when everything's going well. You can handle life. And so we learn to trust Him in the dark moments, in the overwhelming moments. We learn when things are really, really important, but I've got no say and no control and no idea what's coming. We learn to trust, because that's my only path to peace, is to live in the Spirit. Does that make sense? All right, so go with me to Galatians 5, because I want to look at Galatians 5, I want to look at Romans 6, and I want to look at the whole Bible. No, Galatians 5. I get a little bit worked up because this is cool stuff to me. All right, so in Galatians 5, now thinking about this dichotomy, thinking about this reality in all of us, I want you to hear Galatians 5, verses 16 down to the end of the chapter, and I want you to, we're going to talk about flesh and spirit. And see how Paul puts it out there. Okay? Verse 16. So I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the flesh desires what is contrary to the Spirit, and the Spirit what is contrary to the flesh. They are in conflict with each other, so that you are not to do whatever you want. Has anybody experienced that conflict in your soul? Flesh and spirit. Now, before we get off track, which one are you? What's your real identity? Spirit. What do I identify with a lot of times? My flesh. That's who I am. That's just who I am. No, that's your flesh. That's the part of you that's going to die. That's the part that when 1 Corinthians 15 talks about this mortal will put on immortality, this perishable will put on imperishable. Then will come to pass the saying, death is swallowed up in victory. The part that goes in the ground, the part that is swallowed up in victory is this. The part that goes away forever. The part that gets raised again and made new in Jesus Christ, the perishable puts on imperishable. That part that's going to be completely transformed at the resurrection is my flesh. That's not me. This is the me that stays. When you're born again, you live eternally. You are already, right now, if you're a Christian, you are already in eternal life. How about that? You don't have to even wait till you get to heaven. You're already in eternal life because your spirit's alive. You've already been born. You're not getting born when you get to heaven. You become realized in your eternal life, but you're already in your eternal life here. You just happen to also have a flesh that did not get redeemed at all. It's still exactly the same flesh as it was before. All right? And so the Bible talks about how the desires of the flesh is in conflict with the desires of the Spirit, and so you've got this battle inside of you. And he says, but if you were led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. In other words, when I live in the Spirit, the law does not condemn me, because by faith I've been set free from the law. So the law doesn't control me, the law doesn't condemn me, the law is not my guide. What's my guide? The Heavenly Father. Like, in other words, God the Father, my Lord, is guiding me by faith because my trust is fully in Him. I don't have to go find out my understanding. Let me memorize all these laws. I trust Him. Lead me. Okay, so then it goes on to this. The acts of the flesh. In other words, if I let my flesh be in control, here's the kind of stuff that shows up. Sexual immorality, impurity, debauchery, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred. Ooh. Anybody here ever hate anybody? I mean, we could go through the witchcraft one. You know, probably not a lot of people are like, yeah, I was deep into witchcraft. But then we get to like hatred. The next one, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish. Oh wait, this is me. Well, I was good with the, debauchery and idolatry and witchcraft. Yeah, that was stupid. I can't believe those people. Then we got to selfish. Ugh. Guess what? Your flesh is just like everybody else's flesh. That unsaved person that you bump into every day that you're like, I can't believe they live like that. Your flesh is just as sinful as their flesh is. It looks different, but it's still flesh. And it still will do anything that any other flesh would do. It goes on. Selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and the like. I warn you, as I did before, that those who live like this will not inherit the kingdom of God. Now, people get hung up on that, will not inherit the kingdom of God, meaning if you sin like this, you won't go to heaven. And that's not Paul's point. Paul's point is identity. People who live identified as idolaters and selfish people and all that, living as I am my flesh. The people who are genuinely just their flesh, unredeemed, they don't inherit the kingdom of God. What he's saying is, why would you live like somebody who doesn't have the Spirit?
Right.
When this is who you are. I could show you that if we went to 1 Corinthians 6, and this really confused some people in church when we were going through 1 Corinthians chapter 6. 1 Corinthians 6, I'm just going to do this from memory because I want to do it quick. It goes like this, verse 9, verse 10, something like that. It goes, this is what you were before you were saved, right? These kind of people will not inherit the kingdom of God. And it talks about, homosexual offenders and sexually immoral and greedy and slanderers and all this stuff. These people will not inherit the kingdom of God. Then like verse 11 it says, and such were some of you, but you were washed, you were sanctified, you were justified in Jesus Christ. So Paul says, you lived like that. Your identity was that. You couldn't stop doing that kind of stuff because that's who you were. You were flesh. But you were washed from that and you were made new. You were sanctified and justified in Jesus Christ. So now you're this. You know what the rest of the chapter is about? So then, if you're this, why would you take the members of Christ and join them to a harlot? So what were the Corinthians doing? They were acting like they were this, and Paul says, but you're not this, you're this. So stop acting like you're this. He's not trying to make it a threshold of if this sin is in your life, you're not going to heaven. What he's saying is, why would you act like you don't have the Spirit when you have the Spirit, which is the best thing that ever happened to you? Why would you go back and act like you're just the flesh? There's no point. If you've been set free from death and sin and the law, why would you go back and live it? Okay? So flesh versus spirit. Christians can live in their flesh. And it's ugly, awful, horrible. It brings destruction, it brings heartache, it brings pain, it brings confusion, it brings despair. Right? When Christians live in their flesh. Because the flesh always takes you to death. One way or the other. There's lots of ways to die, aren't there? Flesh always brings you to death, but the Spirit always brings you to life. Always. So Paul says, this is the works of the flesh, and all these things. Then he says, but if I live in the Spirit, the fruit of the Spirit is love, and joy, and peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things there is no law. That's a little law humor from the rest of the book of Galatians, right? But he's saying, if I live in my flesh, this stuff comes out. If I live in my spirit, this stuff comes out. So how do I know if I'm living in my flesh or my spirit?
By what?
By their fruit you will know them. Make sense? So Paul says, if this stuff is coming out of your life, guess where that's coming from? Your flesh. Your flesh is in charge. Your flesh is in control. If this stuff's coming out of your life, and the stuff includes joy, peace, love, self-control, is that being produced in your life? He's not saying try to get self-control. He's saying when you're in the Spirit, this stuff is naturally produced as fruit. So if I'm living in the Spirit, this stuff is growing in me. And then he says this, those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Since we live by the Spirit, let us keep in step with the Spirit. Do you see that? He says, what should we be doing with our flesh? Killing it. Unfortunately, we don't often kill our flesh. We harbor it. We maybe move it off to the side for a minute, we live in the Spirit a little bit, and then we come back to it and use it again. Or we try to reform our flesh. So what Paul says here is there's this conflict inside of us all the time. If you're a believer, there's this conflict inside of you. Your flesh versus your spirit. Your flesh uses your own voice. It uses your own patterns in life. It uses your own predispositions against you to drive you to live out of your own strength, your own understanding, your own resources, instead of allowing you or inviting you to trust God and abandon hope in you. That's the battle that's inside of us all the time. Yeah, but don't I have responsibility? Of course you do. But your responsibility is by faith, not by flesh. So when 2 Corinthians, when Paul says we walk by faith and not by sight, he's talking about this. He's saying we have this message in jars of clay. In other words, we don't deserve any of this. I'm just thankful that it's not about what I deserve because I walk by faith and not sight, because it's about the Spirit, not about my flesh. It's not about deserving, it's about receiving, about grace. Okay? So at any time, you and I can choose to live in our flesh or our spirit. So here's what I say to you. On Sunday morning, you come to church and you've had a lousy week and you've lived in your flesh all week. And you come to church and say, I don't even deserve to worship God. It is a misunderstanding. You didn't deserve to worship God anyway. But you were invited to. At any moment, a Christian can stop living in their flesh and begin to live in their spirit. And so, sometimes that accountability of showing up at church on Sunday and lifting up your voice to sing is the mechanism that switches you from one to the other. Some of the homework that I've given you was designed to help you let go of this and engage this. Starve this and feed this. Because in Galatians 5, what Paul says is, this is the answer to your life. First verse. If you walk by the Spirit, you will not live in your flesh. If you walk by the Spirit. It doesn't say, if you try to make your flesh look better. If you try to make your flesh do the right thing. It says, if you will trust this, if you will give up on this and trust this, this won't happen. The answer is living in the Spirit, not trying to do better in your flesh. Too much of religion, too much of Christianity, too much of church has been about trying to do better in your flesh. You should serve God. You should work for Him. You should try to make your life better. You should try to get rid of these things and all that. The Bible never presents spiritual growth as something you should try to do. It always presents it as something that you receive when you're willing to surrender and live by faith. Right? So why do we work so hard at changing our souls and stuff? Your soul's already been changed. By the power of God, you've been born again. It's just living by faith instead of living by your own strength. All right, so let me talk about the flesh a little bit, because I think this is where it really got interesting for me. There are some characteristics of the flesh. One of them is that when you get saved, your flesh is not gone. Your flesh never gets better. God did not redeem your flesh. The sinful flesh, that's why in Romans 7 where Paul talks about the good that I want to do, I don't do, the bad that I don't want to do, I do. It's not no longer I, but sin that lives in me. He's talking about, it's not the spirit, it's not real me, it's the flesh, it's the sin that lives in my flesh that I give into. I buy the lie that it's going to give me something I want. And so I live the way I don't want to live, because what I do want to live is by the Spirit. Your flesh doesn't get redeemed. What does God call us to do with our flesh? Put it to death. Colossians 3. Therefore, kill your flesh. Paul in 1 Corinthians 9. I beat my flesh and beat it into submission. Over and over again in the Word of God, we find that we are at war with our flesh, except most of us have a nice little party with our flesh. We're like, oh, that's just who I am. That's just how I am. I can't really help it. Well, that's not who you really are, because that's not who you're going to be for eternity. That's just what your flesh is trying to convince you that you are, so you'll live like that right now, and you'll feel hopeless about doing anything different. Right? So if you struggle with bitterness, if you struggle with forgiveness, your flesh is in your ear saying, you have the right to it, you have the right to it, you have the leverage of this. The Spirit's going, God had more right than anybody in the world to hold something over your head, and He forgave you, and you certainly can forgive them, because you've already been forgiven, right? That's the difference. I'm looking at the same facts, but I'm responding differently, because the Spirit responds differently than the flesh. The flesh is always concerned about rights. The Spirit is always concerned about what is right. Right? The flesh is a controller. If you are somebody who is a control freak, it is your flesh engaged. And I can put my hand up and say, me too, okay? Because there are things I want to control. But the reality is, it is my flesh that wants to control. And when as soon as I try to grab control of something God hasn't given me, what am I trying to do? I'm trying to rise up in my humanity, my human strength, and take control of something God didn't give me control over. That's my flesh, right? So the flesh is a controller. It will try to gain control any way it can. Any way it can. So if, you probably have seen this, we could go into this really, really deep. If one method of control fails, my flesh will switch modes. Right? So I'm having an argument with somebody, with my wife, right? We're in a heated argument. This is not working. I'm not gaining control. I got to try a different tactic. I'm walking away. I'm walking out of the house. Well, it's saying work. Different tactic. Still my flesh, trying to gain control, right? Looks different, but it's the same thing in charge. Okay, so the flesh is controlled. The flesh is a protector. The flesh is always trying to self-preserve. It is always looking for a path to security without turning to simple trust. It is always responsive to fear and threat. Always. Imagined or real, your flesh is on high alert about things that are scary, things that are dangerous, because your flesh always wants to protect. Now, sometimes we found that the spirit is not protective of you at all. Sometimes the spirit leads you into martyrdom, into persecution. And Jesus says, you're blessed when people say all manner of evil about you. My flesh hates that. Don't say anything wrong about me. Let me tell you why you're wrong. My flesh. The spirit says, Lord, I care very little if I'm judged by these people. You're my judge. It's a faith versus a sight. Okay? My flesh is a protector, and it's always on high alert to things that are dangerous. Your flesh is a deceiver. Your flesh loves to play the game of twisting the truth. Twisting reality. If you've had your feelings hurt, your flesh jumps in there and takes truthful things and twists them so that they're shaded more to make you look better than look worse, right? If you're honest in the mindset, you're like, well, that's not exactly true, but you don't do that. Your flesh goes, no, yeah, and they probably don't even like you. They might go, no, they're the worst person in the world. I don't know if they're the worst. No, they are. Your flesh is just twisting it to make it worse and worse so you can be victimized. Your flesh loves to be victimized. And so your flesh is a deceiver. It's always ready to lie to myself, to rationalize what I have done and why I couldn't have done anything else. It's always ready to justify me, why that was the right thing to do anyway, and I don't know why anybody would have a problem with it. Lying to myself, and certainly ready to lie to others. My flesh loves to deceive, right? But this is the thing that got me. The flesh is like an octopus. All right, so I'm going to draw an octopus. It's not going to look like an octopus. All right, so that's the octopus's head. Now, octopuses have a bunch of arms, right? All right, so this is our octopus. Now, this is flesh. There, I don't know. They have a little peak, right? Don't they? All right, so this is your flesh. Now, each of these arms are going to represent one of the ways that your flesh tries to gain control over you, tries to let you not walk by faith, but instead live by your ability to handle life. Okay? So let's just put a couple of names on these different things, all right? Let's say we got one of these is worry. Okay? One of the ways that your flesh likes to manage life is by worrying about things. Okay? So that's one aspect of that. But that's not the only aspect of your flesh. There's probably more than 8, but we're just going to use the octopus for that. Maybe when things don't go your way, or somebody does something that you've told them not to do, or hurts your feelings, maybe anger is another representation of flesh, where you just get out of control. Or maybe because you can't control what you want to control, you deal with frustration. Okay? And you've tried really hard, but nothing seems to be working, and you're worn out from trying, and you don't know how much harder you can try, and nobody seems to go along with your plan. You know it's the right plan anyway. Frustration, which is an outlet of your flesh. I've said this before. If you are frustrated, you are operating out of your flesh. You cannot be frustrated in the spirit. Because by faith, if I can't control it, God's in control of it. All right, well then you must not call me to it. Faith relieves frustration. The flesh grabs hold, so frustration might be one of those. If I keep trying, and I've gone through anger and frustration, and nothing seems to change, then sometimes what my flesh does is tell me, oh, there's no hope anyway. Just give up. Give into despair. Right? It's useless. It's never going to happen anyway. You might as well just give up. Some people, because life becomes unlivable and I can't seem to manage the pain in life, they'll turn to other things. They'll maybe go to stuff like substance abuse, right? Where I'm going to escape the feelings that I'm getting by opting out, by zoning out, by getting high or whatever, under the influence of a substance. Other people will try to grab more control, so their flesh will start to organize everything. right? And they'll plan out their life to the last detail, because if I can plan it, then I can control it. And my flesh loves to control. So what we talked about on Sunday, where God's in charge of my flesh wants no part of that. My spirit's like, oh, thank God. But my flesh is like, what are you talking about? I have good plans. God should ask me about my plans, because I can help God, right? If people have let me down in the past, I might start to live in protection mode, and I just distrust everyone. And everybody's suspect all the time. Because why? Because if I can be on my guard, if I can have my suspicions up all the time, I'll spot that coming a mile away. And then it won't hurt me. I'll be in control. I'll be able to keep myself safe. Right? And let's just put one more up here. If just trust doesn't work for me, eventually I just won't allow myself to be connected anymore. I'll just isolate. I'll just be all off by myself and nobody can get me there, right? So I've got this octopus. Now, biologically, an octopus with 8 legs, sometimes octopuses lose a leg. Don't know if you knew this, but if let's say worry, I'm gonna get rid of worry out of my life. I'm gonna really, really work hard. I'm gonna give all of my effort, and I'm just gonna cut that right out of my life. Worry's done. I'm done with worry. Do you know what happens to an octopus when you cut off one of its arms? First of all, the other 7 arms get stronger. So you're like putting all your effort into killing worry, and I'm not gonna have worry, I'm just not gonna worry anymore. And all of a sudden, everything is setting you off. Right? And you're just mad all the time. You just can't believe those jerks on the road and why they're such idiots with the things they're doing. Because why? Because I'm working really hard cutting this off, but these are just getting stronger. Right? So I'm not going to worry anymore, but I'll go get high, so I forget about it. That's how I don't worry. It grabs more control. You see what I'm saying? So then, after these other ones get stronger, this one grows back. Oh no! All of a sudden I'm struggling with worry again. Because I was I'm gonna trust people. I'm gonna make it a point to trust people. Cut that off. Well, now I'm angry. I'm in despair. It's not worth it. I'm trying to organize people and manage them all the time. And I'm gonna get rid of distrust. But these things are cropping up, and then that grows back. The answer is not in my flesh to try to reform my flesh. What's the answer biblically? This is the problem. Not the answer. My flesh is the cause of my struggle, not the thing that is the target of my fixing up efforts. That make sense? And what happens is, we see this as like, God's called me to love people. So I'm going to try really hard to love out of my flesh. I'm going to set aside my self-interest. But all of a sudden my pride starts cropping up over here. Oh, I'm so much better at all these other unloving people. Why don't anybody join me on this service project? Nobody cares like I do. I'm the best. Right? So what I've done by engaging my flesh is, whether I've cut one arm of my flesh off, I've engaged the other ones. The problem is not that I need to reform my flesh or bring it under control or manage it. I need to kill it. I need to put it to death. I need to not live out of my flesh. I need to live out of the Spirit. It is a transformational thing. Does that make sense? I know I'm just throwing lots at you. I know it's 8 o'clock, so we're gonna go to Romans 6 quick too. But is there any questions about this? To me, this changed my whole idea in my head about the battle I was facing. Because instead of beating myself up with guilt, because I'm going to feel really bad about all of this, and that's going to make me stop. But all it did, because it was in my flesh, is make despair stronger. Or another flesh pattern stronger. Make me put on a bigger front and a bigger face with people so that people wouldn't see my struggle, right? And flesh just comes up with any number of answers so that the ultimate standing of my life depends on me. What I missed was the invitation for God to say, lay it down. Come and rest. I will do it in you and through you. You do not have to hold the weight of your life. Why would you not trust God like that? Because you don't know what Jesus said. He's trustworthy. He sees. Don't you know your Father sees and knows you have need of these things? And the rhetorical answer to that is, if He knows you have need and He sees your need, He is able and eager to meet your need. And if I can put my roots down in that, I can face anything in life. But I can't face anything if I'm trying to do it out of this. This is just going to be one mess after another. The calling for God is to put my flesh to death. All right, so flip over with me to Romans 6, because how do we do that? How do we shift from living out of my flesh to living in my spirit? And I will tell you, this is a journey. This is not a one-class thing. This is not a one-hour thing, for sure. This is an understanding that God begins. We're going to hopefully plant a seed tonight that grows into something big in your soul. Okay? So Romans 6 is a whole chapter about the difference between flesh and spirit. And now with this understanding and with what we just talked about in mind, now let's read what it says. Start at verse 6 and verse 7. Here's what it says. For we know that our old self, and that word old self is the word flesh in Greek, sarx, okay? Our old self was crucified with Him, so that the body ruled by sin might be done away with, that we should no longer be slaves to sin, because anyone who has died has been set free from sin. So what's Paul saying about my flesh? Theologically, what's he saying about it? What happened to my flesh? It died. It doesn't feel dead, but it died. Where did it die? On the cross. When Jesus died for me, when I received Him as my Savior, the Bible says, my flesh was put to death. And now I've been born again. So what He says is the result of my flesh being put to death is what? He who is dead is... What's it say?
Free from sin.
Freed from sin. This is what this means. Before I was saved, my flesh was all I had. I was a slave to sin. I could not escape it. I didn't have the resources. I didn't have the hope. I didn't have the power. I could not escape it. After I get saved, I have the Spirit. I have a legitimate choice in every circumstance to live by the Spirit. I also have a choice in every circumstance to live by the flesh. And God gives me that choice. Think about why God gave me that choice. Why didn't God just literally kill my flesh and save me so I didn't have to struggle anymore? Why would God give me this choice between my flesh and the Spirit every day?
Choose Him. To make a choice for Him.
Right? I mean, His glory comes when I see His goodness and choose it. Isn't that the best testimony to a dying, lost world in darkness? That He's better than that. So much better. I choose it. And so God makes us the instruments of light, of witness, of testimony to the greatness of our God by letting us live with flesh and spirit and choosing spirit. And the enemy comes along and says, if you live by that faith stuff, you're gonna regret that. You better grab just a little bit of flesh, just a little bit of control, just a little bit of protection, just a little bit of your answers and your ideas and your desires in charge, just for a minute. Except it's lying to you because it doesn't want to be just in charge for a minute. It'll take a minute and then it'll say, you know what, that worked. Let's keep going. Oh, you feel almost in charge. It's almost there. Keep going, keep going, keep going. It's always a deceiver. Right? And so Paul says, when you died, when your flesh died, you were set free from sin. So you don't have to serve it. But then what he says, if you go down further, verse 11 and 12. So count yourselves dead to sin, but alive to God in Christ Jesus. Therefore, because of that, don't let sin reign in your mortal body so that you obey its evil desires. He says, in order for me to live in the Spirit, I have to count myself dead to sin. What's that look like? What's he saying? Yeah, that's the struggle right there. When you grab a hold of that, then you start to see the power of God unleashed in your life. What he says is, God told me I'm dead to sin. My identity is new in Christ. And so therefore, this sin has no power over me. I don't have to live it. I don't have hope in it. I know better. I see better. I trust better. I'm going to give my life to the Lord. This is not going to control. I don't have to say yes to it. I don't have to give into it. It's not my destiny. It's not my identity. It's not anything to me because I've been set free from it. Count yourself. Account for what God says is true. Consider it to be true. Believe it. Trust in it. Talk about it in your mind. Live it out as true. Respond to the truth. So the therefore that we started with. This is true. I'm alive in Christ. My spirit is who I am. Child of God, redeemed, loved, treasured. I am no longer a slave to sin. My flesh has been put to death. I don't have to answer to it. It doesn't hold any hope for me. All it brings me ever is death. So therefore, I will trust the Lord. And when I recognize some of these flesh patterns showing up and being tempting to me, I have to speak truth to it, to me, so that I stay grounded on, there's no hope down here. This always leads to death. And whatever you want to put on your octopus, or however many legs yours has, all of those things you can recognize. And you know how you recognize them? Because they've led you to death. They've led you to deep darkness, to destruction, to hurt, to pain, to despair. They've led you to death. And that's how, Jesus said, that's how you identify your flesh. And when you identify it, make note of it, because the next time it comes knocking on your door, don't be deceived by it, because it's going to promise you the world, and it's going to deliver death. Right? So the answer to when we talk about anxiety, the answer to my anxiety is recognizing it as a part of the bigger problem. That my flesh wants to control me. My flesh is a 2-year-old that's throwing a temper tantrum that will do anything it can to gain control of me. Right? I mean, 2-year-olds, right? Isn't that basically who they are? Anything they can do, say, act, whatever. They don't care. They want their way and they want it now. Your flesh is like that. And it's brilliant in the ways that it manifests itself, clothing itself in good garb and good excuses and good rationalization, but what it always does is takes you to death. Always, always, always. So you can recognize it, you can learn, and you can grow. When I grew up, I believed that the quest of the Christian life was to knock sin out of my life. The Bible says the quest of my life is to recognize Jesus has knocked sin out of my life. Whole different story, isn't it? To live like what Jesus did has happened. And it's true. Because as you read the rest of this thing, it says, so why would you live in it anymore? Right? Don't let sin, therefore don't let sin reign in your body. Why would you, should we sin? Verse 15, should we sin because we're not under the law but under grace? Don't you know when you offer yourself to someone who's obedient slaves, you're slaves to the one you obey, whether you're slaves to sin, which leads to death, or obedience, which leads to righteousness? But you're not slaves to sin anymore. Why would you act like it? That's 1 Corinthians 6. That's Ephesians 4. Put off the old man and put on the new. So don't do this anymore, do this. Why? Because you've been made new. When Jesus talks to Nicodemus in John 3, it is, you can't know the Father unless you've been born again. Nicodemus, a Pharisee, believed you could know the Father by doing all the things God said to do and not doing all the things God said not to do. As a matter of fact, if you rewind all the way back to the Garden of Eden, wasn't that the original choice? Wasn't it a choice between faith and self-determination? The tree of life, eat it and live forever? Or the tree of, what was the other one? Knowledge of good and evil. Why would you need the knowledge of good and evil? That's a good thing. I should have the knowledge of good and evil, right? Because then I would know more, and then I could make good choices. I could do the good and avoid the bad. But where's the resource? What was the called resource? Right? So all the way back to the Garden of Eden, it's the very beginning, when it was, will you trust me to lead you, or do you want to be self-determined? Do you want to know for yourself? And so God keeps asking us, will we live by faith or will we walk by faith? So I would say, don't put any confidence in your flesh. Every time it gives you a solution, recognize it, read it, and if you fail and fall, it's part of the learning process. It's part of the growing process. It's not about, like I said before, it's not about eliminating sin from your life. It's about learning how to live in the Spirit instead of the flesh. Learning to recognize your flesh and choosing to live in the Spirit instead. Alright? Okay, so the point of tonight, the flesh you struggle against is not being redeemed, but it has been put to death, and you are called to continue putting it to death. Right? Self-effort never will work and ultimately will always bring you death. Our journey to find peace only comes as we understand what it means to live and walk by the Spirit. The Spirit that we've been made with. Here's your homework for this week. I have two things for you. One of them is a short project that maybe hopefully lasts through the week. I'm going to give you a memory verse. This is truth that I want you to put on a 3x5 card, write on your mirror, tape record, something, memorize it, say it to yourself every day. Isaiah 12:2. I will read the verse to you. Isaiah 12:2. It says this. Surely, surely, God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord Himself is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. Now that is the truth. And when worry comes your way, when anxiety tries to swallow you up, this truth invites you to believe something different than what anxiety is telling you. Will you? Or won't you? Surely God is my salvation. I will trust and not be afraid. The Lord Himself is my strength and my defense. He has become my salvation. So memorize that verse. Use that for the week. The other project that I would ask you to do, and again, all of these in my mind are designed to get you tuned into the Spirit that God has given you and understand the difference between it and your flesh. All right? So this is what I would say is a prayer project. I would ask you for a prayer list, a prayer book, your journal, something. Make a list of the things in life that you are really thankful for. Make a list. That list can be as long or short as you want it to be. But every morning, somewhere along the morning, thank God for every one of those things. Take a moment and thank God for that, and that, and that, and that. Start your day off thanking God for things that you are truly thankful for. And let the blessing of those hit you. We're probably talking about 5 minutes, not a real long thing, but just enough that you have gotten your hands around the goodness of God. His faithfulness has been evidenced in your life and is still being evidenced, and you are deliberately pointing your attention to that. Then, make another list. Make a list of those who needs God's power for something. Those who are in need of God's power for something. Anything. Someone you know. Maybe they're sick, maybe they're in danger, maybe they're hurting, maybe they're struggling, they're lost, they're wandering, they need salvation, they need hope, whatever. Every night, pray for them. If it's one person, pray for them. For 7 days, get up in the morning, thank God for the things you're truly thankful for, and at night, pray for people that you know are in need. And what you're going to find is, the fruit of the Spirit is love, which means I care about someone else, not just me. And I care about them whether they affect me or not. I care about what affects them. Right? So when I start to engage the things that the Bible tells me the Spirit's all about, when I start to point my attention there, I naturally live by the Spirit. The flesh is disengaged. It's like if I had a light up here, so a stand light. That light is designed to give off light, but it's also designed to plug into a power source. And it's as though there's a receptacle that is spirit and a receptacle that's flesh. And you choose what you're going to plug into to get that light to go. And as long as you believe that your best option to make that light up is the flesh, you're going to keep going back and plug it into your flesh. You're going to try to live out of the power source of your flesh. But the flesh always kills you. It always destroys you. So the invitation is deliberately plug into the Spirit. All right? Okay, so that's an awful lot of stuff. I'm going to let you kind of digest that. I appreciate you here tonight. Let's close with a prayer and we'll get on our way. All right, let's pray. Father, thank you so much for the work that you have done in us. Work that some of us even struggle to realize the full extent of it every single day. So help us as we grow, as we walk, to know what it means to live by faith, to live in the Spirit, and to not put any trust, not put any hope in our flesh. Father, teach us this week and show us so that we will hear your voice more clearly, that we will trust your heart more deeply, and that we will walk by faith every single day. We ask in the name of Jesus.